Hi everyone, it's Ali here again with more songwriting tips for you. Today I want to talk about how to beat procrastination as songwriters. I know procrastination can be a really big thing. We talked in a video a little bit ago about making time for songwriting, but it might be that after you've made time and made sure it's a priority, you still find it difficult to actually follow through and you don't just put it off every time you come to it. So today I want to talk about how to beat procrastination as songwriters. So procrastination is simply putting off something we need or want to get done. In this case, we're focusing on songwriting. In a few videos back, we talked about making time for songwriting, how we needed to first make sure it was a priority. We then needed to schedule it. Next, we needed to make sure we removed all distractions, stopping us from actually sitting down and writing. And lastly, we needed to make a deadline. However, if you've done all these things and you're still struggling to actually sit down and write, when it comes up in your calendar, if you actually say, oh, I've got this other thing to do, I can't do it, then there's obviously other things going on and you need to really look at those if you're actually going to make time to write songs. So today we're going to look at those and how you can overcome them. So there are two types of procrastination, and all forms of procrastination fall within one of these two types. The first type is the size of our goal can be intimidating. This can be because we've decided we want to write a song having never written a song before, and we're trying to write the whole thing straight away. Or it may be even more than that, we're trying to not only write a song having never written one before, but we're also trying to make it the best song anyone's ever heard. Or we're comparing it to our favourite songs from artists that have written hundreds of songs before, and so what we're comparing it to isn't really a fair comparison. This can cause us to feel things like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to be able to do this, there's no point me even trying, and therefore we give up way before, and we never actually finish writing those songs. The second type is based on how intimidating the time needed to achieve a goal might be. For example, we may have given ourselves a month to write a song, but we've only scheduled in half an hour's writing time each day. So when it comes to that writing time, we think, oh, there's not much point just putting in this half an hour. I'm never going to get there in the end if I just write for half an hour a day. And so therefore we just put it off until the next day, and then the next day we never actually sit down to write. Both of these two types have different solutions, and it may be we need to combine solutions from each type to actually stop us procrastinating. I'm going to go over these two different types next and their solutions for each one. The solutions for the first type is to break it down to the smallest action steps conceivable. Rick Rubin, who's a really famous producer, uses this a lot with the artists he works with, whether they're stuck writing a song or they feel they've got writer's block. He'll send them off to do homework where he'll get them just to write one word even, or just one single line, or to play a single note, or just a single phrase. And often they'll end up coming back in the next day with whole sections written or whole complete songs finished. This is because it's so easy just to sit down and write that one word or write that one line, that after we've achieved that, we end up getting a confidence boost, and also we get into a bit of a flow, and we're then able to produce a lot more than we thought we could before. Neil Strauss, who's a famous New York Times best-selling author, I think he's been on the bestseller list over 8 times. He's got a really great phrase I like, which is that he sits down to write just a single crappy page per day. I love that. It just makes it so much easier. It takes all the anxiety away when you're just trying to write one crappy page. I think quite often I'm trying to write something really amazing, and so I'm not happy if I write anything that's not just the best thing I've ever written. So I'll often critique it as I'm trying to write, and that makes it really hard to keep writing. And so after a while I just end up giving up or losing confidence and coming back to it the next day. And then it just makes it really difficult to keep writing. But if you're focusing only on writing one crappy page, It makes it a lot easier. You don't have to worry so much about what you're trying to create. And although it might be for a little while that you write a bit of rubbish, that the first kind of ideas that you come up with might not be very good, if you keep doing it, you're going to keep coming up with better and better ideas. And after a while, you're going to get good sections of songs or good whole songs. And so that way, I think it just takes away a lot of the pressure of trying to write a whole song off the bat. If you're struggling with procrastination that falls under the type 2 category, it may be that you just need to break each bit of time down into smaller chunks and forget about the overall goal you've set yourself. So rather than focusing on having a month to write a song, if you focus on writing a single phrase in half an hour, for example, again, it's very similar to the last one, but you're focusing more on the time. This can be a lot easier to achieve. A great way to do this is using the Pomodoro technique. This simply takes a simple timer, and you can set it for 25 minutes, and you work for those 25 minutes, and then after that 25 minutes is up, you have a 5-minute break. Then you restart it again, work for 25 minutes, and then have another 5-minute break. This can be a really great way of breaking up each task into much smaller bite-sized time pieces, rather than focusing on having to work for those 2 hours or whatever you've set out as your writing time. Breaking up into smaller achievable chunks makes it much more manageable. Another method that I really like, I found from the co-founder of MailChimp. What he often does with his teams is he breaks a month task up into weekly sprints. So for songwriting, if we were, say, trying to write a song in a month, for the first week, we might just focus on doing the outline, coming up with a theme of the song, writing the song hook, coming up with a few key phrases, that kind of thing. The second week, we might try and write a complete outline of the song, or we might even focus on something smaller than that, just writing the chorus. Then for the third week, we might critique it, might play it to friends, let them think what they like, dislike about it. We'll focus on what we like about it. Then for the fourth and final week, we simply rewrite based on all the feedback we've got from people, from how we've critiqued the song ourselves. We then rewrite based on that to hopefully get ourselves a finished song. I really like combining these two techniques, the Pomodoro technique for each individual day, but also the weekly sprints. Really helps break up this month's songwriting into much more manageable pieces, and it makes it a lot easier for me to focus on the songwriting process. Just a word of warning, the time pressure that's created by having deadlines can be a real creativity killer. Personally, I wouldn't worry too much about the bigger deadlines. For example, if you said, I want to write a song in a month, I wouldn't worry about being too strict with this deadline. I'd focus on the day-to-day deadlines and the week-to-week deadlines much more. So if you said you're going to do an hour's writing session each day, and at the end of that first week you want to have the topic outlined, and then the end of that second week you want to have the song first draft written. If you get to the end of that second week and you've not finished that first draft, I wouldn't worry about that too much, as long as you've put the time in each day and really focused on that week's deadline, trying to get that done as best as possible. If you have to extend that out to finishing that first draft in the third week, it's not such a big deal. All right, it extends the deadline a little bit, but it's not going to cost you too much. Unless you're a professional working to really strict deadlines, that's not really going to cost you anything. When you're just starting out, the deadline will help to make sure you don't procrastinate too much. But at the same time, we don't want it to be too much of a pressure that causes you to, again, get stuck. So I wouldn't worry too much about the overall goals. Focus on the day-to-day and you'll find you get where you need to be. So lastly, I want to talk about using incentives and consequences to help us with our procrastination. I talked a bit about, in the Pomodoro technique, using short-term gratification to help us avoid procrastination. That can be really helpful if we, for example, struggle with following through on a long-term deadline. But what's often been found in studies to be much more helpful and to encourage people to keep working to their goals a lot better is actually to give people consequences. So rather than saying, at the end of this month, when you've written that song, you can go and do something you want to do that you really enjoy doing. Actually, if you don't do it by the end of this month, you're going to lose £100, for example. That's often much more incentives for people to actually go out and do what they said they were going to do rather than missing those deadlines. There are great websites for doing this. I recommend checking out stick.com, STICKK, or coach.me. They're both really great websites that help with this. They can really focus you in on your deadline and make sure you don't miss them. If you don't want to use either of those, you could simply tell your friends what you're going to do, that you're planning on writing a song by the end of the month. That way, if you don't stick to it and you don't have that finished song by the end of the month, chances are they're going to call you out on it. And because you don't want to look silly in front of your friends, you'll probably do everything you can to stick to that deadline. I recommend checking these both out if you haven't done before. They can be really helpful in keeping you motivated to your long-term goals. So that's it for today's video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope these tips have helped you avoid procrastination in the future. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know what you thought. Let me know which tips you found the most helpful. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.